All right, Mr. Birdie, members of the board, we do have 3 items for board discussion this evening. The first item is Board of Education presentation schedule for the 2021-2022 school year. This time, I'll turn it over to Mr. Birdie.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Each year, the board gives the direction to Mr. Smith and his leadership team about the items that we'd like to hear about in our work sessions. And so I sent out a message, just a reminder that we were going to do that tonight. So hopefully you've brought a few items that you'd like to see, and Mrs. Gentry Fletcher will act as our scribe, and she'll put them up on the whiteboards. And then once we have all the items up there, we'll then get, I think we only get 3 votes, even though we have all these blue dots. But we get 3 votes. You'll vote on the top 3 that you'd like to see, and then we kind of tabulate all the votes, and then it kind of gives Mr. Smith some direction on what the board would like to see. So would anyone like to start on one of the items that they would like to see come before the board?
I got one right off. A way to measure, gauge the success of the students over the last year. Learning from home, virtual. How do we measure that from years past on their grades? I was even thinking about how if there was flexibility, what that might look like from the teacher standpoint of how they worked with the students' parents on turning in assignments and that kind of thing.
I think I have one that kind of piggybacks that, and remote learning, and how can this be used in the future, right? So we surveyed, and we're not going to use it as a tool this particular school year, but what ways can it be learned? Certainly positives that we took from it and the advantages that it inherently has. And so it kind of ties in with what Mr. Clark's mentioning. We're taking a look back at that specific tool and how it's used and what advantage it may have in the future for us.
That's great. Mrs. Shorter, you have something you'd like to?
Yes, I always like to just sort of have these sessions to remind parents about ways that they can help their kids improve with testing. So if we have information on testing success, be it the ACT, SAT, or AP, and also making a distinction about the differences between AP, CCP, just more like an educational forum for parents. I think those are always good things to see.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's one of the most frequent questions I get from parents. What is the difference between the
AP and CCP.
Yeah, those two. Why would I do one over the other? Or what? So
Yep.
I think there's absolutely a gap in terms of public understanding
And I know it's
how
been
they can be used.
and I think it's been about 4 years since we actually discussed it. So for that new crop of parents, high school parents that are coming in, it's probably a good refresher for them. Since they're going to be making those choices, I want to make sure they understand what those entail and why one option might fit their child better than another.
That's good.
Mrs. Gunner?
Well, sort of along the same lines, I know in the past when we've done these, I've talked about the report card, and we've done several presentations on the report card. But with all of the emphasis that the report card seems to put on standardized testing, I would like to know more about the standardized testing, and maybe other parents would use. Since my daughter's not old enough to be taking those tests yet, what does a typical third grader's standardized testing look like? What are they expected to know at different points? And, sixth grade, whatever grade, and is there anything parents can work on at home to help them prepare for those test days?
Let Mrs. Gina Fletcher catch up a little bit.
Sure.
One thing I would like to do is I'd like to hear, maybe give it some time before we address this, but how the new connection to the Business Advisory Council that we just joined. How well is that going? Maybe just an update on that. Because there's a lot of opportunity to capture some of those businesses for our students and get internships and what have you. So I'd like to hear, how we can take advantage of that.
Right, to your point, I think the employment market is so tight that there's going to be engagement, right? The business community wants to be a part of this project because they see that as a future source of employment for their business. So I think that's great to really look at that and engage in that now. I would have another one would be, again, beyond its obvious impact and value in remote learning, what else are we getting out of one-to-one technology? And so I guess just a full overview of that now that we're a year in. We're going to continue to roll out that plan and spend money on it. I think part of it, feedback I also like, is how are we doing in terms of damaged products, the cost of just maintenance, right? Much less purchase, but the maintenance piece of it as well. Cracked screens. I know it happens, right?
Yeah. Anybody else like to chime in on another topic that I'd like to hear a discussion about?
I think it's always good to look at what the improvements are as far as our counseling. We've done a lot of things to roll out different resources. Just an update on where we are, and if we've seen some improvements already.
It's like the whole mental health of the child from
That's right.
what are we doing with our
From across the board.
okay.
Yeah, because we've got Hope Squad, we've got just a whole slew of
We've now put
initiatives.
counselors into the
Counselors
elementary
are in the
schools.
elementary schools.
What's the impact been?
That's right, and I'm hoping that it's a marked improvement, but it would be good to get an update there to see where we are. Some things are still out there, we don't have enough information, but there are some other programs that we've got.
Can I kind of piggyback to that a little bit, a little dash, especially on the Hope Squad part? With the I'll call it stress that kids are going through right now. These kids that are the Hope Squad kids, the pressure they have with life itself, plus taking on the other pressures of the kids coming to them. I know we give some training, I believe, but what is a definite line of this needs to be turned over to a teacher and you need to step away? Because they're dealing with, and what I've heard from a few kids is the kids that they're meeting with trust these kids, but there's a point where these kids, that's a lot on a kid, on a student, 12, 15 years old, that they don't want to lose the trust in a child or another student. I feel like I'm talking to my wife now. In a student, when do they turn it over? So I think the Hope Squad has good intentions. I just feel like, especially this past year, we really need to identify when that time is to turn these students over to a guardian, a counselor, a teacher, or someone else, instead of trying to work through these children, these kids, these students' problems on their own, and because they've got enough to worry about on their own without taking on that burden of the other student, which is part of the program. But I really feel that's a lot for a student. I really do.
Well, I think it's a tremendous program because that's who they're going to speak to first and most readily. And I think we have put some guide bars on that, but it's certainly still a tough thing. I mean, he's right. It's situation by situation.
Yeah, no, that's a good topic, and that was discussed before we brought the Hope Squad in, and there is some pretty extensive training for kids, and I think parents come in as well, and there is a line, and those kids are trained. However, that doesn't mean it's not hard for them. You know, like you said, they don't want to lose the trust from a peer, you know, but at the same point in time, you hope the training kicks in that, hey, remember what your job is. this is your role. You need to turn this over to an adult. And the hope is that that's what they do, and then it comes full circle. We get help for the peer. But that's a great topic and something we discussed at length before we engage with the Hope Squad. But that's certainly a worthy topic for discussion.
And I guess to add to that, we'll talk about it. But do they get revisited? Is there retraining or ongoing, like continuing education, so to speak, for those Hope students to
Yeah.
say,
I think they-
how are you guys doing yourselves?
Yeah, I mean, I would think so. That's something we can look into and present.
Right,
You
we
know,
basically
in that
took a year
presentation.
off, right? So
Right,
it
right.
probably should be
Yeah.
revisited.
Yeah.
And I would think that I can't imagine that a program like that they would just start a new year and not, they have advisors, they meet
Right.
regularly. That's a program, there's an organization, leaders who coach our advisors, so on and so forth. So it's not a program that, flies by the seat of its pants. It's
Sure.
because it's so important and so critical for our kids. But I think that's a great topic. Those are great questions.
I'd like to find out definitely when they meet, how often do they meet, and is it just, I guess, how often and when? If it's just once a year, I don't think that's adequate. That's maybe for another discussion, but
Right.
how often do they meet and did they meet? Because I know some of these Hope Kids students that still met with kids over this COVID time.
Mhm.
And, they went through a lot. So I don't want to dwell on that a whole lot, but I'd like
Yeah.
to, definitely about the meeting with their advisors, whoever runs the program itself, to kind of get a definitive answers on those.
Yeah, and Scott, I could chime in. Brielle participates, and I know she has the conflict with NHS and the Hope Squad, so I believe that is on Wednesday. They meet pretty regularly, yeah. So they have the trainings that are offered at the beginning of the year. The parents have to go through their orientation, that's mandatory, and the kids are meeting at a regular basis. I want to say that I think it's weekly. It's a club, and so they're pretty face to face. And if there are issues that come up, they're working those out. But I think it's still good to look at the components of it. I know Brielle she's enjoyed it.
And my daughter's on it as well, and I don't recall the weekly meetings happening, so that's why I brought it up.
She's at the high school.
Freshman.
Oh, so I can't speak to the.
Yeah, because this is in middle school and freshman. So I guess more, if that's correct, and I'm happy to hear that, how does the middle school and freshman fall into that I'll say, regular meeting, accountability, advisory part?
Gotcha.
Thank you, Ms. Polina.
No problem.
Anybody else?
I would like to hear, I always enjoy it when we have some of the clubs and other extracurricular, sort of lesser known extracurricular groups come in. Like we had with the Men of Honor did a presentation before. But a lot of times it seems, especially I think with trying to do the student achievement, I see a lot of stuff about sports and whatnot. And I love when I can, find a club information about a club that I didn't hear of before, and I can highlight those students. So if we could hear more about extracurriculars at different levels of the school system, that would be awesome.
I will say, recently, Fairfield Township's zoning board approved some new subdivisions going in. And so it's quite possible in the next 3 to 6 years, we'll have an additional 400 to 500 homes in Fairfield Township. So I'd like to know how are we going to prepare ourselves for that possible impact? And so I think that, again, that could be something later down the road, because that's not going to happen for a while. But if we can know at least how the district is planning, are they having meetings, or we're going to start gearing up the 2.0 again and see what we need to do. Because if all those homes go in and we have all those students flooding north and east, what do we, what's our reaction to that? So I would like to hear what we may be doing.
Ironically, I will share that I just set up a meeting, or sent an email to set up a meeting for the first week of August to talk about re-engaging and building our future 2.0. So that'll
Great.
interesting you bring up that topic this evening. So.
Okay, anybody else like to add anything to that list? Okay. So we have, I think, about 40 stickers, but we get 3 votes, and so so we can go up and put a sticker. Don't put the sticker on the dot, because that gets confusing. Put the sticker next to the items that you'd like to hear, and vote on your top 3. And we don't need to do one at a time. We can all go up there together. But just kind of look at over the list and which ones you'd like us, the staff, to address. And then Mr. Smith will take the top 3 to 4 to 5 or to 6, whatever he feels we need to hear about. Okay? So I'm going to head up there. We can read your writing. Very good.
I play Jeopardy music.
Yeah. Right. So it looks like we have 4 votes for the ways parents can help their kids with testing, 4 votes for standardized testing, 4 votes for counseling update, because there is 1 vote off to the right side. And then 2 votes each for the clubs and how are we going to prepare for the community growth. So I think it's clear that we have the top 3 items listed there, but there's probably 5 that we could probably
Put up another sticker.
And
5 topics.
And some of those are naturally going to be a presentation. So,
Right.
Building our future 2.0, that was going to happen anyway.
Okay.
And then mental health and counselors, we've done that quite a few times, and that's always a really good one. So, yeah, those are outstanding topics. Some of them are new.
Yeah.
And so it's good. Exciting.
That's great. Well, I thank you all for your work on that and being prepared. That's always good when we're prepared for meetings. So thank you all very much for that. Okay, the next 2 items are for Mrs. Ogg. So if you'd like to jump in, feel free.
Sure. So thank you, Mr. Birding, members of the board. In your board packet was supposed to be an academic support tutor job description. I did email that to you
Yes.
earlier this week, so hopefully you got a chance to look over that. So the academic support tutors, we intend to hire them as part of our ODE learning recovery efforts using ESSER funds. We first talked about the addition of these tutors at the March 17th board meeting when we presented the plan I mentioned earlier that was required by Governor DeWine. So academic support tutors are most similar to the EL tutors, which we just redid their job description at the last board meeting. And so a few important notes about the tutors. The tutors will work directly with students based on needs determined by the building principals. The positions are not permanent. Tutors will be paid hourly and on an as-needed basis. We hope to employ these tutors for at least 2 years, but we will evaluate at the end of next year to make sure that they're having the impact that we want them to have in the classroom. So we plan to hire 2 tutors at North, East, South, West, Creekside, and Crossroads. Compass and Central, because of their larger populations and more significant needs, will be allowed to hire 3 tutors. And then the freshman and senior high can hire 2 tutors per core content area. So, and those tutors will be shared between 9th grade and 12th grade. So the job description is also on the agenda for approval tonight so that we can start the hiring process as soon as possible. So I don't know if you had any questions for me. You were able to look over it.
Yeah. I guess my question is that both enough tutors and is it too many? And here's what I mean. Is it enough tutors in a building like Compass or Central where we have needs? Is 3 tutors across all those grade levels enough? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Basic question. On the flip side, when I say, is that too many, will we be capable of finding and hiring these people and retaining them?
Yeah, so I'll answer the second question first. I mean, we are concerned about whether or not we will be able to find people to fill these roles because so many school districts are doing very similar things. They're hiring coaches or adding teachers or, in our case, we're adding academic tutors. So we are hopeful. One of the things that we were intentional about in the job description qualifications, we would like, licensed teachers to take those roles, but we also allowed for someone to hold a substitute license. So if we have a recently retired teacher who maybe didn't keep up their licensure, but they have a substitute license, then they could come in and fill that role for us. So we're trying to give ourselves a little bit of flexibility with these tutor positions too, because they're hourly. If someone comes in and they're fantastic, but they say, I watch my grandkid every Friday and I cannot work on Fridays, the principal could say, okay, then, we can be more flexible with those hours that you work. In terms of is it enough, we don't know yet. I can tell you we've had some conversation with the elementary principals specifically, and they are really trying to be very intentional about thinking about, here are our district goals for the future. Here are building goals for next school year. If I really want to focus on foundational literacy and numeracy in K-2, then I'm going to take my 2 academic tutors and I'm going to attach them to those grade levels. And I'm going to use them in a very intentional way to make gains in the classroom. And so, even though that might be leaving out other grade levels, our goal is to try to measure whether or not they're actually working as well. So I have a lot of confidence that our building leadership will really assess the needs of the building and use the resources they have to meet those needs. They'll always want, more resources. We can always use more people, but hopefully just the addition of these can really help to fill some of the gaps that we have in different areas. So.
And how many teachers is this in total? Tutors?
Oh my gosh. So it's about 20. Is that
And it's okay, you
so
don't
that's
really have
12.
to.
No, yeah, it's close.
It's lower than what I was thinking, but, so like what Mr. Beggy was saying, you're hopeful we find these folks, but if we don't, then what? And if we, it seems that if we don't find them, where will we find them? I know you have outlets for that, but I guess what I'm trying to ask is, do you really feel there's that many retirees that would come out to do this? And if not, is someone going to leave where they're at to come here to do this and then go back? That doesn't seem plausible.
No, they probably won't leave somewhere to come here and do that role, but we also have, the pool of college graduates who may come out of college and think that this would be a great opportunity.
Stepping stone type thing.
Right.
Okay.
We may not be able to tap into that group of folks until maybe late July, early August. But, that's a whole other pool of people that we could pull from. It won't just be retirees. That's just one.
Yeah, I understand, and thank you for that. So would we post at colleges then for that? Is that what we do for? We've never really done this before, but. And I asked that also for the community to know where those outlets would come from, where there were resources we would use to get those.
And we'll use
positions
social
filled.
media. Mrs. Myers in the HR department is really good about using social media to try to recruit people when we have open positions. So.
Well, thank you.
Mr. Smith?
Yeah, if I could add just a few things. I think one of the most important things Ms. Aug referred to was evaluation. And I think we will be evaluating this program from the beginning because we've never done it. And other school districts are going to find themselves in the same boat. It's going to take time for our staff members to get used to having these tutors there because, again, they've never had them. I mean, on the surface, we're really excited.
Yeah, right.
Because now we hope excited about providing that additional support for the kids, but we will just have to continuously evaluate as we proceed through this process because we haven't done it before. And then the other thing I want to point out in regard to recruiting is another word that Ms. Aug used was flexibility. It's very competitive out there. And, for example, the one example she gave was that, hey, I don't want to work on Fridays. Well, hey, we can work with you around that. Or, if you have a part-time college student who could come in 4 days a week and 3 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the afternoon, they have an afternoon class. I mean, this position allows us to work through that. And again, it's very competitive out there in the market. And so the more flexibility you have for potential candidates, the better. So we won't know until we know. But we, just like some of the other things we've talked about this year, we have to give it a shot. And we're going to put our best foot forward and continue to evaluate it and just keep working at it and do the very best we can for our kids.
Mr. Smith, if I could just add to, regarding the question about will this be enough to really move the meter or make a difference in our kids, once we get back, everybody's back full-time, community volunteers are allowed back in our elementary buildings. The way that we approach making up this deficit and these gaps, we'll use all of our existing people as well, maybe in a more intensive manner. Our Title I tutors, our educational assistants, our special ed educational assistants, our EL tutors, all these people will be working to erase these gaps. So the addition of 30 qualified professionals into the mix will really make a difference for us. So it'll be back to all hands on deck to try to remove these deficits.
And with the other districts also doing the same thing, we feel confident in that.
Everybody's doing a little
It's
different.
a little different.
but-
Like Northwest is hiring instructional coaches, Hamilton's hiring additional classroom teachers. So everyone kind of has a slightly different spin,
Approach to
but
it.
certainly adding additional support personnel during the school day was something at the top of a lot of people's list. exists.
Roger, what you said about the opening back up and volunteers coming in, that's a part we aren't counting here, and it's more help. Good, excellent.
Any other questions on that topic? Okay.
Yeah, my next topic did not include a handout, so, but I forgot. My next topic is about an EL teacher at Compass and/or Central Elementary. So as you know, Fairfield has a growing English learner population, and we've been monitoring that growth at Compass and Central for the past several months, and have determined that it's going to be necessary to hire an additional EL teacher because we're approaching that threshold. So this teacher might work full-time at Compass, or might have to split time between Compass and Central next year. We will determine that closer to the start of the school year when we have more definitive numbers at both of those buildings, but we wanted to make the board aware of this need. So, do you have any questions regarding the additional teacher at this time?
I don't hear any. Great, thank you.